Hello and welcome to Coffee and Childbirth podcast with Dr. Rhee and Dr.
Cheers.
Kelsey.
As she's taking a sip.
Because I need this, guys. Okay, so we are actually really excited to have our setup a little bit different than last time that we recorded this. And today we're just going to talk a little bit about what we actually wanted to bring to you, why we're doing the show, perspectives from therapists and a chiropractor who don't do this as a job, but we know that the information that we're telling moms when we're in visits is very relevant to more than just the mom we're talking to at the time.
Right.
So we want to be able to share that. And also just like the conversations between our two professions is not something that we see very often.
Yeah, definitely not.
Or respectfully.
Mm-hmm. If it does, it's sometimes not so respectful.
So we're trying to at least bridge that gap. I'm going to let Dr. Rhee introduce herself, and then I'll introduce myself, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. So I'm Dr. Justine Rhee, and this is my 18th year in practice. I'm a chiropractic doctor. Yay.
Snaps for 18 years, man.
18 years. Feels like forever ago. And I was just talking to another friend of mine that I don't feel like I've been in this for 18 years. It feels like I just kind of got started, probably because I did in Las Vegas.
Right. You're restarting something that's completely different than what you had done elsewhere.
Right. So I practiced in LA. So specifically, I started in Pasadena, and then I had a second office that I moved into in South Pasadena. So I was in my first practice in Pasadena, this is California, for about 10 years. And then I did a huge 10-year anniversary party as I was moving into a second office. And that second office was in South Pasadena. So which is great because I always dreamt of having a small practice, and South Pasadena felt small to me. You know, coming from
LA,
like just in LA, you know, the LA County is huge. A lot of people say LA. Well, LA is not just the city, but it's also the county. So it's huge, and I served a great demographic there, but it was more of a family practice. Half of my practice was like kids and moms of all ages, and then the other half was probably everybody else in the demographic. So dads and uncles and grandpas, right? Grandmas. So everybody else was like the other 50%, and the first 50% were like babies, kids, teenagers, moms. So it was a great run in LA for 15 years, and honestly, I was very burned out. I had a lot of plans for making that practice even bigger than it was. I wanted to hire more doctors and train more doctors in what I do, but COVID happened.
To everybody. In different ways.
And my plans got derailed. And so instead of pushing through some more, which caused a lot of problems personally, I ended up saying, God, where do I go? So I ended up walking away, kind of struggled for like a year or so, traveled a lot, which I love doing, which I did not get a chance to do a lot of
when you were working like crazy.
Working like a dog. So I didn't get to do a lot of travel. I think I gave myself one vacation in 15 years. So that was not good for me mentally. And so anyway, so fast forward, I ended up here, and I met this amazing physical therapist who serves the same demographic as I do, which has led us kind of where we are, which we'll talk about in a second here. So Dr. Kelsey, tell me about you and your practice, actually.
So I am Dr. Kelsey Daniels. I go by my first name because I want to be cool. I don't know. People always ask me, and I'm like, you know, I mean, that's probably the real reason is like when people say Dr. Daniels, I'm like, looking around like, who is that? That just feels weird to me. I don't know if I'll ever change that. I don't know.
I think that's you, though.
I just feel like that's me. It's like who I am. So as far as physical therapy goes, I used to work I started out in early intervention and actually a neuro clinic here in Vegas. Went into early intervention back in Seattle, Washington, which is where my family is from, and then ended up back here with when our first son was about, oh my God, so he was like almost 2 years old. Wow, that's wild. So he was almost 2 years old, and we moved back here in November 2020. So part of the pandemic kind of ripple effect. Because my husband's in hospitality, so it just kind of made sense for us. Was working with an agency, was working with an outpatient clinic, trying to figure out, I had a business license at that time, and I was trying to figure out
here in Las Vegas,
which direction I wanted to go. Do I want to just do home health? Do I want to build something with another clinic? Do I want to build from like the inside out, help them do their thing, so that I would have less of the headache? Business conversations will happen in another episode, but that ended up not necessarily being where I knew I'd make the most impact in the community, and also just in all honesty with the time that I wanted to spend with my family and the flexibility to make that decision. So I had actually been in business for, when was that? A couple years at that point. And I had tried a couple co-working places, and I didn't hate them. I didn't love them. It just didn't seem the right fit.
It probably didn't feel like home.
Didn't feel like home. Didn't feel like I could hang out on the couch, have a conversation with somebody, a referral person, and then go about my day. It just felt kind of clinical, oddly in a term. And so I found Bottega, and I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself time here as a community open space member. I decided to go into an office with the intent to cost share the use of that space, the use of the office space. And so when I had met you, I was doing classes there and groups. So I wasn't doing treatment there, still doing in-home, just because that's how it felt natural. But the groups was still something that I really also felt like was great. And so we connected because we were right next door to each other. And so it was like, oh, you're, not just a chiropractor that treats people, but you're specific with women and children. And most of the, oh man, sorry if that hurt the mic, but I just realized I was like, whoa.
I gotta forget for camera.
Remember, we're new to this.
Yeah, we're new to this.
You can leave us in too, because this is just real life. But so I was like, oh, someone who treats women and children specifically, not like, oh, I treat the whole family. That's great, but I honestly just don't feel like that's the same.
Yeah, it's not.
It's just not the same.
So where are you from again, though?
So I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, born and raised there. My husband's from there. We had our first son there. We had our second son here, and I feel bad because our littlest is 3, so he doesn't really understand yet, but he'll be like, yeah, I lived in Seattle too, or we lived there too.
We're going to be like, no, you didn't.
And we're like, you're a Vegas baby. Like, you were born, you were bred, like you were conceived and born here and grew up here. Like, it's cool. Trust me, it's cool.
Right. And he's going to be, when he realizes that, he's going to be very proud
of it. Yeah.
Because I moved here about a year ago, and I've noticed that there is a different pride for native, born and raised Vegas like people. And I'm like, respectful.
He's our connection. He's our in.
He's the root for Las Vegas for you guys.
So, so that's how we ended up meeting. As far as really saying like, oh, this is not something that you do because the client happens to come in and they happen to be pregnant. No, we're talking to you about birth. We're talking to you about the perspective of a doula. We're talking to you about the perspective of a midwife. We are not those people, but. And I would love to hear more of, I still haven't heard a lot of like your birth stories and just that experience, but we either have experienced it, we've trained someone through it, we are really specific to that. And I think that's important. Not because it means everything we're saying is right, but we have a little bit different perspective to that.
Well, I think our education also, very different perspective as well, right? And people ask me all the time, patients ask me all the time, what's the difference between, chiropractic doctors and, a medical doctor, right? And Well, our approach, our philosophy, our perspective of human body is very different. So, the show itself, I think understanding birth and even just childcare, right?
Right, because the parenting is the postpartum. So you've had birth, but now you're parenting while also recovering from this event. And even if the event was, like, I just saw a client was it this week? So today is Friday. That was Tuesday. Same week.
Right.
I saw her, and she had a really incredible home birth, water birth. By all accounts, fast, at home, in the water. Great.
Natural.
Yeah. 1 degree to
Yeah.
2nd degree tear. Didn't have to have stitches. All these things. And her infant has been having feeding issues from the get-go.
God, isn't that funny how that is so common?
So even that is like,
Yeah.
you've had, it's really not a finish line of like, you've had the baby and now we just are chill. I mean, yes, you're devoting time to rest and recover, but you have to be able to have the endurance.
Yeah.
It's a marathon. It's not a sprint of like, we're just going to get there.
Well, I mean, with that said, right,
Yeah.
why do we start the show, right? I mean, why do we start this podcast is really the main conversation that we wanted to have, because why are we doing this, right? And so now that you know kind of like a gist of like what Dr. Kelsey does and what I do, and it was such an organic, natural
Connection.
mesh that happened between us. So let's just talk about that origin story of our show.
Yeah.
We were in the back room because this is a huge
Training room.
Yeah,
We were in the
training room, not in the back room. Sorry,
That's okay.
Training room in the back side of the building. We were just like talking about, what were we talking about? I feel like it's been a while. So what were we talking about? We're talking about.
I think we
some
were
sort of-
talking about understanding what we each do.
Okay.
So like
we're learning about each
We're
other.
learning about like
Correct.
what our credential, or
Correct.
not even
That's
necessarily credentials, but what you do in a visit.
Yeah.
What kind of clients do you
That's
treat?
right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so we were just having a chat about understanding each other's practice. And I was not wearing this shirt. And
think
you
I was
were
wearing
wearing
this
that shirt. Correct.
Yeah.
So you were wearing that shirt. And then I said to myself, I was like, oh, like that looks like the same shirt that I have, but in chiropractic. So, this is the shirt that I have.
That'll get YouTube views for sure.
Yes.
We should be
So-
putting the on the front.
Right.
What is that, on the thumbnail or whatever? Okay, so sorry. Yes, you were
So-
wearing that shirt.
So I was wearing this.
or-
No, you were wearing
Yeah.
this shirt. And then I remember thinking to as you were speaking to me, and I
Yeah.
was probably not listening because in my head, I was
You're
like,
looking
oh,
at
I
my
have the same shirt. I have the same shirt. But it says chiropractic. And so then we had and then at the end of the meeting, and I think I shared, and I was like, oh, where'd you get that shirt?
Yeah, and I was like, a client got it for me like
Yeah,
years ago.
right.
And I still really love it.
Yeah, and it's a great
Shout out to
shirt. So I
Sarah.
said, I have one, but it's in pink, and it says chiropractic.
Yeah.
It's probably from the same
Yeah.
Etsy
Right, we
store.
were like, Etsy for sure.
So then we ended the meeting, and then I think I was walking out of I can't remember if it was the same day or if the next day, and I thought, what a great name for a podcast. Not that I'm horrible on social media, like horrible.
We're
All the
working
posts
on
that you see on my Instagram is thanks to my very good friend, Eva.
So shout out to Sarah,
Yes.
my client friend, for getting me this shirt.
Yeah.
Shout out to Eva for helping her stay on the
Yes,
social media.
on social media, because I'm so bad at it. And so she's been super busy. That's why you have not seen any new content. So when she's busy, I'm not doing social media.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to the story. So it just came. Like, it just came to my mind, and I thought, oh, what a great little idea for a podcast. And I thought, I wonder if anybody would do that podcast. And then I thought, wait, why can't we do that podcast?
Yeah.
So then I brought it up to you, and I said, let's do a podcast together about your perspective, my perspective, and maybe even bringing people in together.
Yeah.
And then call it Coffee and Something,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And I forget our initial names I'm sure we have it written down somewhere.
It's in a Google Doc lost in
Somewhere.
the bowels of Google Drive somewhere. But
we did.
yeah.
That's what we
Yeah.
did, right? So
Yep.
we're like,
Yep.
coffee, and we went through a couple names.
Yeah.
And then we said childbirth, but child meaning like
Right.
children,
Yep.
just one child
Yep.
or
Yep.
children. And then birth. So not childbirth as in like the birth,
Yeah.
birthing of a child, but that plus children,
'Cause
and then the
yeah.
world of birthing.
Because the range that we treat is from prenatal
Yeah.
to postpartum,
Yeah.
and then somewhat into kind of perimenopausal
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Because postpartum is technically forever. But,
Forever.
we're trying to be able to support
Yeah.
the person who comes to us during their pregnancy and say, I want something different. I want something maybe different than I had the first round. Or maybe different than what my mom experienced, or my aunties, or my sister, and then also into like trying to help the next generation of the infant to child too,
Right.
support, because so often
Newborns just
it's
get
really hard.
I mean, I can't remember. I can't count how many times I've heard from moms.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have gotten
Yeah.
help.
Yeah. ...
Right? I wish I would have, whatever it may
whatever
be.
it is.
And I feel like it's because we don't talk about
Yeah.
it enough. And we don't live in a village anymore. We live
don't.
in our own home
Yeah.
with our own thoughts,
Yeah.
with our own screen, right? With our own emotions, and no one's there to help you most of the time. A lot of women are, it's difficult to have
Yeah.
family around. We live far from each other
Yep.
now.
I mean, we don't have any family
Yeah.
that are, we have chosen family. We have lots of great
Correct.
friends, but
Correct.
it's
different
it's
when you
complex.
got-
It's different,
Yeah.
and even just in that time period, this is kind of last thing that I'll say, but even in that time period of, I wish I would have, there's so much happening that it's usually not your exact
Right.
decision to be like, oh, I didn't get this help. There's a lot of factors. But at least if it's in kind of your understanding before, and you maybe have an understanding of who to ask a question to, or who to go to a group, or who's, where these things are happening, it might have a little more impact to you.
Yeah.
So I think we're there on time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to thank anyone who is watching and listening to this. Please subscribe, because we'll have some more.
Yeah. This is just the beginning.
This is just the beginning.
This is just our own little thing
Yeah.
that we're doing in our own little. This is like the alarm going
I
off.
think this is the alarm. We didn't turn the alarm off, but it's okay.
Forgot. So let me just turn this off for a
Pause.
second.
One hot
Let me just
second.
which I don't even know. Okay, there we go. So, so just to wrap things up,
Yeah.
right? Our goal is to create conversations. That's really what it is when it comes to this podcast.
Yeah.
Conversations with people we agree with,
Yep.
people that we disagree with.
Have a different perspective. From maybe.
Yeah. The goal is also to learn from each other, or dislike what we just learned, whatever it may be, right? But also to just honestly be open-minded about hearing from everybody's perspective, if possible,
Yeah.
right? And being open, like I think being open to other people,
Yeah.
stories and education, like
Sure.
or material of understanding, like right,
Yeah.
just like educational materials too. But I think it's just, this is how I see this podcast going. It's just creating a mecca
Yeah.
for children and the birthing world, the moms, right? And creating a community between that. And I would love to see that community grow in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning about Las Vegas, but I can tell you that you get lost in a big community.
You do. You get lost in a big
Right.
community, and I
Yeah.
do think that there's great kind of like microcosms or like pockets of community, but either it's behind a paywall, which obviously it's important to have support for your services. I do agree with that
Yeah.
for sure. But if someone's just happening along, and seeing the information, I want that to be accessible to you, and then you can decide which direction you're going to go versus
Right.
never having hearing it even once
Yeah.
before
Correct.
you have access to decide which direction you're going to go. So we have a lot of kind of different things coming, I think, different perspectives, and so we're excited to be here, and
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
Yeah. So look for our next episode.
All right.
Not sure what we're going to be doing yet, but
It's on a schedule.
it is actually on schedule.
We'll see ya.